PATENTOMATICS channel. Welcome to Patentomatics channel. In our today video we are going to talk about radio patent, US patent number 645576, issued to Guglielmo Marconi in 1900. To make sure hit the like button, share and don't forget to subscribe this channel. Inventors around the world were churning out new and exciting inventions left and right in the years leading up to the 20th century. Scientific work in radio technology was heating up too. Two men in particular, Serbian-American scientist Nikola Tesla and Italian physicist Guglielmo Marconi, went head-to-head in what would become the race to invent the radio. After emigrating to the US in 1884, Tesla invented the induction coil or Tesla coil, a device essential to sending and receiving radio waves, and one the US Patent Office would later say Marconi relied on for his work. But in 1895, a fire destroyed Tesla's lab as he prepared to send a radio signal approximately 50 miles, 80 kilometers, to West Point, NY. Meanwhile, Marconi had been conducting his own experiments and in 1896, sent and received Morse code-based radio signals at distances spanning nearly 4 miles, 6 kilometers, in England. That same year, he applied for, and was granted, the world's first patent in wireless telegraphy in England. Tesla applied for his first patents in radio work in 1897 in America. He also built and demonstrated a radio-controlled boat at Madison Square Garden in 1898. In 1900, the U.S. Patent Office granted Tesla patents 645,576 and 649,621, the fundamental design of the Tesla coils, on March 20 and May 15 respectively. Tesla's radio patents gave him ownership over one of the key necessities in radio communications. That same year, on November 10, Marconi filed patent number 7777, for tuned telegraphy. At first the Patent Office denied Marconi's applications on the grounds that his work relied on the use of Tesla coils. Unfazed, Marconi used his father's connections and wealth to spearhead a profitable business based on his telegraph technology while continuing to pursue his radio patents. In 1901, he transmitted the first transatlantic telegraph. Marconi reapplied for 3 years while he gained financial support from company investors Andrew Carnegie and Thomas Edison. Finally, in 1904, the U.S. Patent Office inexplicably reversed its earlier decision and gave the Italian the patent for invention of the radio. Marconi won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1909, further fueling the rivalry with Tesla. In 1915, Tesla sued the Marconi Company for patent infringement to no avail. Marconi had won. Or had he? In an ironic twist of fate, Marconi's company sued the U.S. government in 1943 for patent infringement during World War I. But the case never made it to court. Instead, to avoid the lawsuit altogether, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld patent 645,576, thus restoring Tesla, who had died a few months earlier, as the inventor of the radio. Nevertheless, many people still tend to think of Marconi as the father of the radio. The Nobel Prize in Physics 1909 was awarded jointly to Guglielmo Marconi and Carl Ferdinand Braun, in recognition of their contributions to the development of wireless telegraphy. Guglielmo Giovanni Maria Marconi, first Marquis of Marconi FRSA, the 25th of April 1874 to the 20th of July 1937, was an Italian inventor and electrical engineer, known for his creation of a practical radio wave-based wireless telegraph system. This led to Marconi being credited as the inventor of radio, and he shared the 1909 Nobel Prize in Physics with Carl Ferdinand Braun, in recognition of their contributions to the development of wireless telegraphy. Marconi was also an entrepreneur, businessman, and founder of the Wireless Telegraph and Signal Company in the United Kingdom in 1897, which became the Marconi Company. Marconi was interested in science and electricity. In the early 1890s, he began working on the idea of wireless telegraphy, i.e., the transmission of telegraph messages without connecting wires as used by the electric telegraph. This was not a new idea. Numerous investigators and inventors had been exploring wireless telegraph technologies and even building systems using electric conduction, electromagnetic induction and optical, light, signaling for over 50 years, but none had proven technically and commercially successful. A relatively new development came from Heinrich Hertz, who, in 1888, demonstrated that one could produce and detect electromagnetic radiation, based on the work of James Clerk Maxwell. At the time, this radiation was commonly called Hertzian waves, and is now generally referred to as radio waves. There was a great deal of interest in radio waves in the physics community, But this interest was in the scientific phenomenon, not in its potential as a communication method. Hertz's death in 1894 brought published reviews of his earlier discoveries, including a demonstration on the transmission and detection of radio waves by the British physicist Oliver Lodge and an article about Hertz's work by Augusto Righi. Righi's article renewed Marconi's interest in developing a wireless telegraphy system based on radio waves, a line of inquiry that Marconi noted other inventors did not seem to be pursuing. Developing radio telegraph, Marconi's first transmitter incorporating a monopole antenna. It consisted of an elevated copper sheet, top, connected to a Righi spark gap, left, powered by an induction coil, center, with a telegraph key, right, to switch it on and off to spell out text messages in Morse code. At the age of 20, Marconi began to conduct experiments in radio waves, building much of his own equipment in the attic of his home at the Villa Grifone in Pontecchio, now an administrative subdivision of Sasso Marconi, Italy, with the help of his butler, Mignani. Marconi built on Hertz's original experiments and, at the suggestion of Righi, began using a coherer, an early detector based on the 1890 findings of French physicist Édouard Branly and used in Lodge's experiments, that changed resistance when exposed to radio waves. In the summer of 1894, he built a storm alarm made up of a battery, a coherer, and an electric bell, which went off when it picked up the radio waves generated by lightning. A relatively simple oscillator or spark-producing radio transmitter. With these improvements, the system was capable of transmitting signals up to 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers, and over hills. A wire or metal sheet capacity area suspended at a height above the ground. A coherer receiver, which was a modification of Édouard Branly's original device with refinements to increase sensitivity and reliability. A telegraph key to operate the transmitter to send short and long pulses, corresponding to the dots and dashes of Morse code, and a telegraph register activated by the coherer which recorded the received Morse code dots and dashes onto a roll of paper tape. In the summer of 1895, Marconi moved his experiments outdoors on his father's estate in Bologna. He tried different arrangements and shapes of antenna, but even with improvements he was able to transmit signals only up to 1/2 mile, a distance Oliver Lodge had predicted in 1894 as the maximum transmission distance for radio waves. 28. A breakthrough came in the summer of 1895. When Marconi found that much greater range could be achieved after he raised the height of his antenna and, borrowing from a technique used in wired telegraphy, grounded his transmitter and receiver. The monopole antenna reduced the frequency of the waves compared to the dipole antennas used by Hertz, and radiated vertically polarized radio waves which could travel longer distances. By this point, he concluded that a device could become capable of spanning greater distances, with additional funding and research, and would prove valuable both commercially and militarily. Marconi's experimental apparatus proved to be the first engineering complete, commercially successful radio transmission system. Please subscribe this channel. Marconi applied to the Ministry of Post and Telegraphs, then under the direction of Maggiorino Ferraris, explaining his wireless telegraph machine and asking for funding, but never received a response. An apocryphal tale claims that the minister, incorrectly named first as Emilio Cennio, later as Pietro Lecava, wrote to the Longara on the document, referring to the insane asylum on Via della Lungara in Rome, but the letter was never found. In 1896, Marconi spoke with his family friend Carlo Gardini, honorary consul at the United States Consulate in Bologna, about leaving Italy to go to Great Britain. Gardini wrote a letter of introduction to the ambassador of Italy in London, Annibale Ferrero, explaining who Marconi was and about his extraordinary discoveries. In his response, Ambassador Ferrero advised them not to reveal Marconi's results until after a patent was obtained. He also encouraged Marconi to come to Britain, where he believed it would be easier to find the necessary funds to convert his experiments into practical use. Finding little interest or appreciation for his work in Italy, Marconi traveled to London in early 1896 at the age of 21, accompanied by his mother, to seek support for his work. He spoke fluent English in addition to Italian. Marconi arrived at Dover, and the customs officer opened his case to find various apparatus. The customs officer immediately contacted the Admiralty in London. While there, Marconi gained the interest and support of William Preece, the chief electrical engineer of the General Post Office. The GPO plaque on the outside of the BT Center commemorates Marconi's first public transmission of wireless signals. Impressed by these and other demonstrations, Preece introduced Marconi's ongoing work to the general public at 2 important London lectures, Telegraphy Without Wires, at the Toynbee Hall on the 11th of December 1896, and Signalling Through Space Without Wires, given to the Royal Institution on the 4th of June 1897. Numerous additional demonstrations followed, and Marconi began to receive international attention. In July 1897, he carried out a series of tests at La Spezia, in his home country, for the Italian government. A test for Lloyd's between the Marine Hotel in Ballycastle and Rathlin Island, both in County Antrim in Ulster, Ireland, was conducted on 6 July 1898 by George Kemp and Edwin Glanville. A transmission across the English Channel was accomplished on 27 March 1899, from Wimereux, France to South Foreland Lighthouse, England. Marconi set up an experimental base at the Haven Hotel, Sandbanks, Poole Harbour, Dorset, where he erected a 100-foot high mast. He became friends with the Van Raalters, the owners of Brownsea Island in Poole Harbour, and his steam yacht, the Electra, was often moored on Brownsea or at the Haven Hotel. Marconi purchased the vessel after the Great War and converted it to a seaborne laboratory from where he conducted many of his experiments. The message was received by the radio operator of the South Foreland Lighthouse, who summoned the aid of the Ramsgate lifeboat. SS Ponce entering New York Harbor 1899, by Milton J. Burns. Marconi had sailed to the U.S. at the invitation of the New York Herald newspaper to cover the America's Cup International Yacht Races off Sandy Hook, New Jersey. The transmission was done aboard the SS Ponce, a passenger ship of the Puerto Rico Line. 46. Marconi left for England on 8 November 1899 on the American Line's SS St. Paul, and he and his assistants installed wireless equipment aboard during the voyage. Prior to this voyage, the Second Boer War had begun, and Marconi's wireless would bring news of the conflict to passengers at the request of some of the officials of the American line. On 15 November, the SS St. Paul became the first ocean liner to report her imminent return to Great Britain by wireless when Marconi's Royal Needles Hotel radio station contacted her 66 nautical miles off the English coast. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe this channel.